I hope by now you all know that the priceless gift I gave was one of my kidneys. Russ was gracious enough not to say that. But in 1999, I became the first person in America to donate one of my kidneys to a complete stranger. First question I get when people find out that I did that is, why in the world would you want to donate one of your kidneys to a complete stranger? And with the media, I sort of just gave them a quick answer and said, well, I don't need both my kidneys. I jokingly thought I should get a bumper sticker for the back of my car that said, a spare to share. But I was afraid everybody would stop and ask me to help them change a tire, so I didn't do that. The truth is that the decision that I made in 1998 was a decision that really had taken all of the experiences of my lifetime to make. I was born in 1954. My parents were poor. They're both alcoholics. They quit drinking 2 weeks before I came into this world. Never saw them take a drink. While other kids learned the Pledge of Allegiance, I learned the Serenity Prayer. I was 15 before I realized that not all kids spent every Sunday evening in an AA meeting with their parents. My dad was a carpenter, never acquired much material wealth, but taught me a most valuable lesson, and that is that the worth of a man's life is not measured by the material goods that we collect, but by whether or not we leave the world a better place than we found it. So from my father, I learned purpose. From my mother, who took in ironing, cleaned other people's houses, I learned gratitude. The saying that she taught me that I carried forever was, I cried because I had no shoes, and I saw a man who had no feet. So I left home with gratitude in one pocket, purpose in the other one, a Serenity Prayer in my heart, and became a registered nurse. Spent the first 10 years of my nursing career in the emergency department as a trauma nurse. I saw the worst that life has to offer. Gunshot wounds to the head, a 17-year-old couple on their way to prom hit by a drunk driver, the mother carrying her infant through the ER doors screaming because a few minutes earlier she'd found her baby blue in the crib, victim of SIDS. I learned that life isn't fair. I learned that bad things happen to good people. I also learned, in case your mother told you to always wear clean underwear, that it doesn't make any difference. Some of you are old enough to get that, I know. If you aren't old enough, ask the person sitting next to you, they'll explain. Next 10 years of my life, I spent in hospice. At least with hospice, I knew what to expect. All of my patients were going to die. And they did all die. They all came with a story. They all came with a lifetime full of lessons. And they all wanted the same thing: compassion, caring, comfort, and I could provide that to my families. By the time I approached my 40s, I'd seen 1,000 patients die. I took my experience in emergency room and my experience in hospice, and I combined them and started working for the Organ Procurement Organization in Indiana. What that meant is that I was the first person who talked to families who had just been told that their loved one had suffered brain death. Imagine, if you will, a 12-year-old boy admitted to the emergency department, critical condition. Family has spent 2 days in the pediatric intensive care unit praying for a miracle. The neurologist has just left the quiet room, and if any of you have ever been in the quiet room of an intensive care unit, you know it's not where you want to be. The neurologist has just left and has told the family that their 12-year-old son is brain dead. There will be some decisions, he says, that you will need to make, and there will be someone to come talk to you in a few minutes about some of those decisions. And I was the someone who came and talked to them. I was the person who sat with that family and talked to them about organ donation, explaining it, answering their questions, crying with them. 90% of the families that I spoke to about organ donation said yes. In the very worst moment of their lives, they could make a decision to share the little bit of what was left of their loved one with complete strangers. Day after day, I saw tragedy turned into triumph. I promised those families two things: that I would do everything within my power to make sure that their wishes were carried out, because I knew that there were 8 or 10 people who were going to get a second chance at life because of the decision that that family had made in the quiet room of that intensive care unit. I also knew that somewhere down the road, one of the things that might provide that family comfort was the fact that their loved one hadn't died in vain, that there'd been a purpose for their child's death. And the second thing I promised every family that I provided care to is that I would take care of their loved one just as if they were my own, and I did. I'd been working with the Indiana Procurement Organization about 2 years when I had the opportunity to attend a conference and heard Dr. Lloyd Ratner speak, who had pioneered a new procedure at Johns Hopkins called laparoscopic nephrectomy. Not interested, I thought. I don't work with living donors. My donors are all deceased. I don't like to hear doctors talk. I think they're boring. I don't like the big scream, blood and guts. I don't really want to go. I stayed. Dr. Ratner started talking about the new procedure, and I was just, I don't want to watch this. He started showing the video, and literally, I felt something tap me on the shoulder and say, "Joyce, you can do this." I said, "What?" He said, "Joyce, you can do this." And I knew what I had been asked to do. Suddenly, that video that Dr. Ratner was showing wasn't just about some strange procedure that someone else had done. That was going to be me. I was going to donate a kidney to a stranger. That was going to be the surgery I was going to have. Oh, and just in case you think I'm someone that goes around hearing voices all the time, I don't. I promise. It had only happened one other time. That was when I was bungee jumping off of a 300-foot bridge in Costa Rica. And halfway down, this voice came out of heaven and said, "Are you crazy?" So I promise, I don't always go around hearing voices, but 2 times in my life I had heard voices. So made the decision instantaneously to donate one of my kidneys to a stranger. The videotape ends. Dr. Ratner, who is a very conservative East Coast physician of few words, said, "Are there any questions?" Man, my hand shot up. He said, "Yes, ma'am." I had this vision that people would be lined up outside Johns Hopkins waiting to donate a kidney, okay? Easy procedure, right? 44,000 people needed kidneys, okay? Be off a few days, no big deal. Why would anybody not decide to donate a kidney? It was so easy. So I asked him, "Do you just have people lined up outside your door waiting to donate kidneys?" Oh man, wrong question. He thought I was crazy. He didn't even answer my question. He just kind of went, "Next question, please." So I thought, that's not going to work. So I waited till all the question and answers were done. I waited till he was alone, and I coyly went up to him, took my hand, shook his hand, and said, "Dr. Ratner, my name is Joyce Rausch. I really am serious. I really want to donate a kidney." He takes a step back. He goes, "Well, do you know somebody that needs a kidney?" I said, "No, sir. But there are 44,000 people who need a kidney. Somebody's got to need my kidney." I go, "Is this a problem?" Yeah, this could be a big problem." I said, "Dr. Ratner, here's my card." I said, "Could I have your card and I'll give you a call in a few days." I'm sure he thought I was literally the craziest woman who lived in Indiana that he had ever met. Not only did he not think he would ever hear from me, he was praying he wouldn't hear from me. So, conference is over. I drive the 3 hours back to Fort Wayne where I live. I know that I'm going to need to tell my family that I've decided to donate a kidney. Again, no big deal in my book. Person I was most worried about was my husband. He passed out when Grey's Anatomy came on TV. I knew I would have to be careful. I plotted. I thought, okay, what am I going to do? You know, get dressed up, take him out to dinner, a few glasses of wine. Oh, by the way, honey, I'm going to donate a kidney. Had it all worked out. Wrong. I walk in the door. He goes, hi, honey, how was your conference? Oh, God, my conference was great. And guess what, Richard? I'm going to donate a kidney. He threw up. And timing was bad. I had made my decision, though. I was going to donate a kidney. What I didn't know is that it was going to take Johns Hopkins 18 months to take my kidney. I contacted Dr. Lloyd Ratner a few weeks later, told him I wanted to do this. He explained to me it really was a big deal. It had never been done in America before. First thing I needed to determine, was I healthy? I had more blood drawn the first few months than the American Red Cross collects on a successful blood drive, okay? I'm not sure whether they were trying to decide if I was healthy or hoping they'd find some reason that I was not healthy. Nonetheless, I passed every physical test. I was incredibly healthy. Next test, I had to have a psychological evaluation. Now, I can't see you guys out there, but is there anybody who really would feel comfortable proving that they were sane to a psychologist? Me neither. I thought, how am I going to prove I'm sane to a psychologist? I flew back out to Baltimore, met with a psychologist, passed the test, no problem. By this time, a year has gone by. A year. I'm still working every day with donor families. I'm still watching those families make the decision to donate their loved ones' organs. There's people dying every day waiting for organs, and I can't find somebody to take my kidney. I can't give my kidney away. My husband came running down the steps of our two-story house one day, yelling, Joyce, you're not going to believe this. There's somebody trying to sell a kidney on eBay, $1 million. Now, that's against the law, okay? eBay pulled it really quickly. But the point was, there was somebody that was going to sell their kidney for $1 million. I never let my husband forget what I was worth. Okay. 17 months went by. I carried my cell phone everywhere, just like hopeful recipients carry a pager, waiting for it to go off saying there's an organ. I carried my cell phone everywhere, hoping that I'd finally get the call that Hopkins would go ahead and do the surgery. The thing was, they had to run it through not only their medical panels, they had to take it to their ethics committee. They had to decide if it was ethical for someone to do this. 17 months later, I got a phone call from Johns Hopkins. I was going to have the surgery. I was going to fly out to Hopkins, have one last round of medical tests, and at that time, meet the 13-year-old boy who was going to get my kidney. Now, Hopkins had talked to me earlier about whether or not I would be willing to work with the media. Hadn't ever even thought about that. But because this was the first time in America that it happened, I quickly realized that if I would be willing to work with the media and tell the story, that there would be other people who might do the same thing. I could not be the only person who would be called to make the same decision. So I flew out to Johns Hopkins a week before the surgery. I met with Christopher. The media was everywhere. Christopher was 13. He was shy. He held up well with all the flash bulbs and the cameras and the interviews. Came back to Fort Wayne, surrounded by cameras. CBS Evening News with Dan Rather basically lived with me for 3 days, followed me everywhere, okay? Let me tell you a couple things about the media. First of all, never say anything you don't want them to say. Second of all, make sure you turn off your portable mic when you go to the bathroom. I learned that the real hard way. Third of all, never put your family on national TV before 5 a.m. in the morning. They are not going to look very good to the world at 5 a.m. in the morning. But I worked with the media, and I made a deal with them. I said, don't make me out to be a hero. I'm not a hero. I am an ordinary person. I'm willing to work with you because I believe that if you tell the story, others will be called to come forward. We made a deal. You can tell the story. I'll be glad to work with you, but please, it's for the purpose of spreading the word. And that's what started to happen. I flew out to Maryland 7 days later, had the surgery. It was successful. Again, media was everywhere. Everywhere we went, we were followed by cameras. Came back to Fort Wayne, same scenario. It was a happy story. It was a great story. How many happy, great stories do we have in America these days? Not many. So the public loved it. And I traveled all over North America for the next 18 months telling the story. And every place I went, somebody else heard about the possibility to save a life. Toughest audiences for me were the medical doctors, the transplant communities. I went up to Canada to speak. I honestly thought I was going to get tarred and feathered, okay? They really could not get why someone healthy would do this to a complete stranger. In January of 2001, I had the great honor to carry the Olympic torch as it traveled through America. Oh, such an exciting experience. And as I dressed in my Olympic uniform and held my torch out to be lit, and the flame was passed to me, and I carried it, and I passed the flame on to the next person, I realized that that symbolically was time for me to pass the flame of this story on to the world, and that's what I did. I came home that night and took my Olympic suit off. I put all the letters and postcards and videotapes in the box underneath the bed, and I put the story away. Over the next 10 years, I moved to North Carolina. My children grew up. My parents died. I worked as a nurse, Park Ridge. 6 months ago, I was awarded with the Athena Award, an award given to women who demonstrate excellence in their profession and commitment. I accepted it somewhat reluctantly because I knew that in accepting it, my story would come out, and it did. People in North Carolina found out what had happened in Indiana 10 years ago. TEDx called and asked if I'd speak. I told them no twice. Okay. Mainly because I wasn't sure that it was still a story that needed told, but I realized that it was. I was terrified to speak again. I had not presented in over 10 years. Second of all, I had absolutely no idea what had happened in the area of organ donation in that decade. I hadn't checked. I hadn't gone online to see what was going on. So I had some serious work to do. I told TEDx I'd come today and speak, and then I went to work. I sat down at my computer, did my web search, non-directed kidney donation. I couldn't believe it. Site after site after site after site came up. 13 countries in Europe had sites on non-directed kidney donation. Australia, Canada, where they wanted to tar and feather me, were doing non-directed kidney donations. There were 1,400,000 sites dedicated to non-directed kidney donation. In 1999, there had been 0. There's one site called matchingdonors.com where people can register. There's 10,000 people registered to be kidney donors on that site. So do I think one person can make a difference? I do. I didn't know so much until this past month how much one person's life could make a difference. So what I wish for each of you is that you will find your idea worth spreading, that gratitude and purpose will be what you carry in your pocket, that you will find serenity and wisdom and peace. Namaste.